Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Thanks for watching. Here are your top stories tonight. It's been 1 year since the October 7th attack. We hear from members of our Jewish and Palestinian communities as they reflect on this painful anniversary. And a crash at the Children's Aid Society. We will show you the damage. Plus, Enwin is showing off its new EVs. We'll take a look in just a little bit. Today marks 1 year of the Israel-Hamas war. It's cost thousands of lives, disrupted families, and touched people all over the world, including here in Windsor. And on this difficult anniversary, Dale Molnar spoke with members of local Jewish and Palestinian communities.
Well, October 7th is a difficult day for us all, largely because we're still in mourning and we're still worrying about the 101 hostages who are still in Gaza.
The executive director of the Windsor Jewish Federation and Community Center says thoughts amongst the local Jewish population go back to October 7th of last year and the current state of hostilities.
Well, I think a large portion of our community has family or friends who live in Israel, and I'm not exactly sure of anyone who's directly lost a family member, but we definitely all worry about our family who lives there.
But with the Israeli government response to the attacks has come suffering and death in Gaza, over 40,000 dead so far. One Palestinian-Canadian woman we talked to describes the lack of medical attention her family members have experienced.
My cousin had to give birth, C-section, no anesthesia whatsoever. No anesthesia whatsoever. Until now, they have not documented the birth of her baby because there's no place to document the birth of the baby. There's no place to give birth certificates and stuff. Like the basic necessities that they need, they're unable to get.
Kiran Javed is originally from Afghanistan. She has been helping people in Gaza through a group called Operation Protective Edge and has helped a Palestinian family come here to Windsor.
And it was just a miracle. It happened. They crossed the border, they're in Egypt, and I will never forget the call. We are here, we are alive.
The Jewish community is planning a memorial service tonight to remember those Israelis affected by the October 7th attacks.
We have a list of their names and we'll be sharing that. We'll be lighting memorial candles in their memory, as well as for the hostages who are still in captivity. We'll be doing some prayers and some songs. And together as a community, we're also going to be sharing stories of resilience, the stories of people who were involved in the attacks on October 7th last year, and we're going to be hearing how they have overcome and their stories of resilience moving forwards.
The time and location of the service is not being released due to security concerns. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
We will have much more on the escalating crisis in the Middle East coming up a little later in the program, including reports from CBC correspondents on the ground in Israel and Gaza. We want to now give you a quick traffic update. There are substantial delays at both the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel and Ambassador Bridge. Wait times are around 45 minutes right now, and the delays come after the Ambassador Bridge was temporarily shut down around 4:30 p.m., but there are no details on what caused the closure. And a tragic update now. A 16-year-old boy is dead after being hit by a vehicle in Essex over the weekend. It happened around 7 a.m. Sunday on County Road 18 near Britton Road. No word if any charges will be laid. And the Children's Aid Society building along Windsor's riverfront was damaged over the weekend. While CAS isn't saying how it happened, the damage appears to be the result of a collision involving a vehicle. Boarded up windows are now up at the rear of the building on Riverside Drive East. Mangled visitor parking signs can also be seen, and the sidewalk in front of the windows is also stained from some type of liquid. CAS says it has contacted Windsor Police. Enwin is showing off new rigs this week. It's part of the push to go electric. The CBC's Chris Ensing took a look at the vehicles and asked if our grid can support the EV transition.
I'm at Enwin, where they're leading the charge towards electrification. Behind me here, 10% of their fleet, which is now electrified.
We've got 12 EVs, and they're a variation of plug-in hybrids. And again, our centerpiece is our electric 55-foot electric bucket truck.
Call it the crown jewel, one of the first in Canada, ready to roll out in Windsor with roughly 300 kilometers of range and $1 million price tag. Enwin says it's cost competitive with their non-electric versions.
Well, if you're going to do a story on one of Canada's first electric bucket trucks, you got to get in the bucket. Take a look at how high up we are. But it's not so much about how high up we are, it's about how quiet it is. Because it's an electric engine, this thing's practically silent, which makes communication a lot easier for the folks on the ground.
It's very quiet, so it allows our crews to communicate better. It's not as loud in the community when they're doing repairs in someone's backyard. So there's a lot of benefits to that as well.
And the early adoption of electric rigs, that's keeping up with Enwin's history.
I think it speaks to the history of Enwin as well as an energy company. 10 years ago, Enwin was the first to adopt and buy a Chevy Volt and be the trailblazers on the street with a Chevy Volt. And that was something that you might have only had 10 years ago, just a handful of electric vehicles in the entire county.
Way more than 10 now. The number of EVs grew by half this year compared to last, with more than 3,000 registered across Essex County. Enwin says the grid can handle it.
We haven't seen the need to make any changes on the distribution system to serve EVs.
The problem right now wouldn't be demand for energy, but supply. That's why the province has been pushing new energy generation or storage projects this year. Enwin is planning for an expected increase in demand and sees the government mandates on new vehicles really spurring that change.
It's almost like a hockey stick curve, and we're on the blade right now, and we'll be getting to the fast increase in the uptakes probably in 5 years or so.
For now, Enwin says it wants to lead by example and encourage other companies to kick the tires on an electric fleet. Chris Hensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather. And Colette, I feel like a broken record, but I'm just going to keep saying it. What a beautiful day.
Yes, it was another beautiful day. And there are a string of beautiful days yet to come. So I'm really encouraged by our forecast, and I will get to that in just a moment. But I am going to start with what's happening in the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. And this is, yes, recent imagery of what is a Category 5 hurricane, Hurricane Milton here. Even still on the satellite, you can see that very clearly defined eye wall. So this is a major hurricane. Category 5 is the strongest category that it is in. It is going to tag by the Yucatan Peninsula, but it's really got its sights set on Tampa. And Tampa is a very vulnerable part of the west coast of Florida, having so much to do with how much infrastructure there is. 3 million people living in that Bay Area, and it is very low-lying with a rising sea level. So storm surge is going to be a big problem. Yes, you can see it's expected to wind down a little bit, still be a major hurricane. The waters do get, these are water temperatures, just a little bit lower, and there's a bit of wind shear, but it's going to expand in size. So that is going to be a real problem. All the areas where you're seeing red, which is most of the bay, here is over 2.75 meters, 2.75. It's likely going to be over 3.5 meters. So that is the potential there. And they're already dealing with heavy rains in that region. And of course, they've had Helene already going through too. So watching that area so carefully. No, it's not going to have an impact on our weather. Instead, we're talking about, fair conditions. High pressure is kind of holding on for southwestern Ontario, even though there's this little upper trough. So it will bring a few sprinkles if you're going to be traveling in the province tonight, into Tuesday, even into Wednesday, up towards Cottage Country, the Bruce Peninsula, over towards the Golden Horseshoe. But notice how southwestern Ontario here kind of stays out of it. Our current temperatures, very comfortable, seasonal for this time of year. Overnight tonight, as we head towards 7, 8 a.m., we'll fall to our lowest temperatures, and that's when we're quite likely to bottom out around 6 degrees for Windsor, slightly milder there into Leamington. We are going to see those winds still a bit breezy into tomorrow, especially the earlier part of the day, so kind of tonight into tomorrow morning. Some of the gusts will be stronger, but then it's up to 19 degrees Wednesday, a little extra cloud in there. That's about it. Sun on Thursday, and then as we head into the holiday weekend, that temperature actually spiking a little bit.
Honestly, couldn't ask for anything better for an October forecast. That looks awesome. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Let's take a live look outside there at our beautiful city skyline there. And on the left, our calm waters. And when we come back, we're going to have more on Hurricane Milton for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. Exactly 1 year ago, Hamas militants entered Israel, killing about 1,200 people and taking 250 hostages. The conflict it sparked still rages, and it's not just between Israel and Hamas. Houthis fired rockets at the Jewish state from Yemen today, while Hezbollah did the same from Lebanon. Israel continued to hit Beirut today and has warned the Lebanese people of its intention to strike the country's southern coast. But today, most Israelis are focused on the site where it all began. Sasha Petrusik reports from southern Israel, where a music festival became a massacre.
At daybreak, music pulses through southern Israel, just like a year ago at the Nova Festival. Back then, thousands danced with joy. Now hundreds are remembered in sorrow. Right after this song last year at 6:30, sirens wailed, rockets flew, and heavily armed Hamas militants stormed in. Festival goers tried to run, but 40 people were taken hostage, 364 killed.
This nightmare wasn't supposed to happen.
Among the dead, Noah Faraj. Her mother can't imagine why.
We don't accept it. There's no room for hate, revenge, anger, no.
But even here, grieving is pierced by the guns of continued conflict. Artillery shooting into Gaza next door. Israel's leaders vowing to continue fighting until total victory, including destroying Hamas's rule and military capabilities. Some 1,200 people died in the October 7th attack, 250 taken hostage.
It was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust, but unlike the Holocaust, we fight back.
Israel has stretched itself to fight this war, with some reservists spending 300 days in Gaza. Yovav Tzur says it was his duty after the Hamas attack.
We saw the devil that day.
But he also blames Israeli leaders who failed to protect the country.
We don't want it to happen again. We believe that we need to do something extreme.
Communities across the South, devastated by October 7th, had their own ceremonies. But after losing so many, including more than 100 people in Nir Oz, there are misgivings. With the war still raging, just a few kilometers from here in Gaza, and even widening up north, and with almost 100 people still held hostage, including some from Nir Oz, this kibbutz, many say it's not possible to memorialize October 7th. It's just too soon, too painful.
We are still deep, deep in the trauma. We are not out of it. Not yet. I hope someday it will come.
Not possible, say hostage families, until their loved ones are back. And at this protest ceremony, they say the Prime Minister hasn't tried hard enough. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Reim, Israel.
And the conflict between Israel and Hamas has expanded to include people in Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iran. But over the past year, it's been the Palestinians in Gaza and the Israeli-occupied West Bank who have been most affected. Here's the CBC's Chris Brown.
Sunrise in Gaza reveals the utter enormity of the damage inflicted by Israel's attacks over the past year. There were no gatherings or services here, just more despair and anguish. Israeli strikes in Gaza City have killed at least 52 people in the past day, say local Palestinian medics. The youths were sitting and doing nothing, and the rocket fell on them, said this bystander. They're innocent people. There's no resistance. Hamas marked the one-year anniversary of their murderous attacks by firing off rockets at Israel, injuring 2 people, an indication perhaps that after all the destruction and mass displacement, the militant group is hurt but not defeated. According to Gaza health officials, 42,000 people have been killed and 97,000 injured, with many of the survivors losing everything.
This year destroyed everything that I did for the last 6 years of my life.
A videographer working for CBC News in Gaza talked to Mohammed Adda, a 25-year-old medical student who would have graduated to become a doctor this year.
I am full of hopes, but in this year I had to burn it with my own hands, because if I didn't do this, the Israeli rockets will destroy it instead of me. So my hopes is getting smaller.
For many Palestinians in the West Bank, this was a day of defiance against Israel's long occupation and to show solidarity with the people of Gaza. Here in the West Bank, it's also been a year of despair, with impeded movement, an economy in ruins, and escalating attacks from emboldened Jewish settlers. Sumaya Qasim told us she cannot feel happiness anymore. Kids are dying, their arms and legs are cut off. What kind of future can they have, she said. Her words were sadly prophetic. As we spoke to her nearby at Kalandia, Palestinian youths clashed with Israeli forces who fired with live bullets during a raid on the refugee camp. 12-year-old Hatem Raith was shot in the abdomen and killed, making him one of the nearly 700 Palestinians killed by Israel's military or settlers here in the past year, and leaving yet another mother in mourning. Chris Brown, CBC News, Ramallah.
Turning back to weather now. Colette had mentioned Hurricane Milton. Well, it has strengthened into a dangerous Category 5 storm in the Gulf of Mexico. It's the second major storm headed toward Florida in less than 2 weeks.
This storm has a potential, and it looks like could be a lot worse than Helene. Get out if you're in an evacuation zone. Don't take chances. There's no tomorrow if you are caught in the midst of this storm.
The state is preparing for its largest evacuation in 7 years. Milton is projected to make landfall Wednesday, likely in the heavily populated Tampa Bay area. And it could remain a hurricane as it moves across the state toward the Atlantic Ocean. Much of Florida's west coast and the Miami area are under hurricane and storm surge warnings. And this comes on the heels of the catastrophic storm Helene, which swamped the coastline on September 26th. It then ripped through several other states, killing more than 200 people and leaving behind a swath of destruction. Back to Canada now. Police investigators are trying to learn more about an alleged serial killer. Sabrina Calder has been charged with killing 3 people in 3 different Ontario cities in 3 days last week. CBC's Lisa Shing has more on the investigation and on how friends and families of the victims are dealing with the tragedy.
The card games go on at this Italian social club, but without one of its regulars.
He was a gentleman and a scholar, and a judge of fine wines.
Just a very pleasant man, quiet, humble, just an excellent friend and member of the club.
That friend, 77-year-old Mario Bilic, a retired teacher, stabbed to death in Hamilton, Ontario, Thursday. Bilic's daughter, Serena, posted, "I sit in a puddle of tears thinking about my dad, a great man with a huge heart." The alleged killer, 30-year-old Sabrina Calder, arrested in a nearby city, now charged with 3 murders. Security video obtained by CBC News shows Bilic's final moments, leaving the Italian club to head to his car, while Kaltar allegedly followed him. And here, the same woman running from the crime scene.
We were all taken aback. I mean, my goodness, this is madness.
Bilic is the last of 3 people police believe Kaltar killed in 3 different cities in a span of 3 days. The others, an unidentified woman in her 60s in a West Toronto neighborhood, the only one who police say Kaltar knew, and 47-year-old Lance Cunningham in a Niagara Falls park. In an email to CBC News, his wife Kim wrote, "He was my best friend, a wonderful father for our daughter, the fun dad. He did not deserve this." So far, police say there's no clear motive, and since the victims were both targeted and random,
it is allegedly a case of serial murder, but it also again has a lot of these traits that are more closely aligned with historically what criminologists and homicide scholars would call a spree killer.
Niagara police say the accused had previous interactions with police but never charged Kaltar. Now they're trying to find out whether any other attacks in the province might be linked. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
We'll turn to some lighter stories after the commercial break. We're going to take you to New Mexico for the annual Balloon Fiesta. Stay with us. In Florida today, a European spacecraft and 2 cube-shaped probes launched aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, engines full power.
The mission's aim is to visit an asteroid that NASA intentionally knocked off course using a probe in 2022. The Hera spacecraft is due to reach its destination in 2 years to measure the size and depth of the impact crater and to study the composition of the asteroid. This is part of an international effort to determine if we can prevent dangerous asteroids from hitting the Earth. This is the week that the Nobel Prize winners are announced, and it started with the award in physiology or medicine. The prize is going to scientists Victor Ambros and Gary Rufkin from the U.S. They're being honored for their discovery of microRNA, a new class of molecules which play a crucial role in gene regulation and give us a better understanding of how life on Earth began. The prize comes with a $1 million award. Winners are invited to receive their prizes in person at a ceremony in December. And it is a sight to behold over the skies in New Mexico for the 52nd annual Balloon Fiesta. Hundreds of them in all shapes and sizes floating above Albuquerque this week. Time-lapse images here reveal the colorful spectacle coming to life in the early morning's hours. Take a look at these images of 500 balloons lying flat on the ground until launch time. And then once inflated to full size, they rise from the ground to float into the air. Organizers say the popular festival is the largest gathering of hot air balloons in the world. And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, you can go to our website. Just go to cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful night. Have a good night.